Are you worried about today's dire financial situation?
Put simply, I would argue the Biden economic plan is working.
The storms on Wall Street continue today after regulators seized the assets of Silicon Valley Bank, marking the largest bank failure since the 2008 financial crisis.
Do you worry you'll have enough to pay your mortgage, pay your children's college tuition, enough to retire?
I believe our banking system remains strong.
Regional banks in focus once again today as the market digests the fallout of the First Republic failure.
You have questions, we have answers. It's the Gold Standard with Ken Russo and Jennifer Horn.
Thanks for joining us. It is the Gold Standard Radio Show. Ken Russo and Jennifer Horn back together again. And Ken,
I'm glad all those bank problems are all fixed.
Everything's
from
fine.
the introduction of the show.
You know, the bank is fine. The interest rates are great. Inflation, what inflation? Please. The big question today.
Okay.
Is, are we headed for a total collapse of the heart or a reset?
A collapse or a reset.
That's it. That's it. What are we going to see? And
absolutely.
Boy, if our politicians have something to do with it, probably both would be the answer to that question. But before we jump into whether or not we are headed for a collapse and maybe even a reset after that, we have to talk about how we got into the situation that we are in now. And that means lots and lots and lots of spending, lots and lots and lots of borrowing, lots and lots and lots of printing money.
How is this possible?
Well,
how could we just print money out of thin air?
I'll tell you, because back in 1971, Richard Nixon was there.
Where?
In Washington, D.C.
Okay.
Alongside Pat Nixon. Richard?
Print it up.
And guess what he said? He said, you know what? This whole idea of backing up our currency with gold, that's not fun.
Yeah, no, we
He's
can't
like,
do
this
that.
is not, we can't party when we have to back up all of our dollars with gold. We can't.
No.
So he said, you know what? Let's just try something. A little experiment. Let's just say, you know what? No more.
Everything fiat.
Fiat currency for everybody.
That's right. I'm going to suspend the convertibility of the dollar into gold.
Was that much more fun, President Nixon?
Wabba, wabba, wabba. Yeah, I mean, that's
what he did. That's what happened.
That's the experiment, fiat money experiment. That's, 53 years old now.
How are we
that
feeling
was
about
done
that?
temporarily
Right.
for the benefit of the dollar, for the benefit of the stability of the dollar for every single American.
Got to be a great patriot and support these bird brain schemes.
If I had to ask you a question, my best student, $1 from 1971, roughly how much is that worth today?
15 cents.
Yeah, it's about right.
Is that right?
Yeah.
That's what you normally say,
Yeah, it's
isn't
about right, yeah.
Okay, good. I don't like to get a B. I
15
only get
cents.
An A student. Now, let's try a hard one.
Now, if you had $1 worth of gold from 1971.
What is it worth today?
Yeah, how much would it be worth today, roughly?
$1 worth of gold?
Remember, gold at that time was about 30.
30, it'd be worth a lot more.
About 80.
80, perfect.
$80 of gold.
That's pretty good. And so this is where we talk about how gold is the ultimate hedge against inflation. Your devalued dollar, right? That dollar that doesn't go as far. Well, gold traditionally holds its value at time.
And we want our listeners to think of gold as money.
Yeah.
I got a call today from a client, and they said, oh, well, I could have done a lot better with a piece of property. Oh, I could have done a lot better with a stock. I said, well, there is a time and place for everything. And those speculations worked out very well in some instances for some people.
Right.
But if you think about gold just as money, and if you think about your paper currency as money, and you look at a store of value, and you look at holding that buying power, and you look at stability, and you look at control, privacy.
Yep.
That's kind of the reasons why someone would say to themselves now, well, I would like possibly some of that. Like I've told you before, Jen, gold is not about trying to get rich.
Right.
Gold is trying to stay rich.
You've got, so we talk about the buckets, right? You put some of your money into certain buckets. You want to put money into a wealth creation bucket if you want to earn more money for yourself, but gold is about wealth preservation. It helps you hold on to the value of what you've got.
That's the way that I would look at it, and that's its role. And so if anybody is listening today, we hope.
Hi.
And you look at the banking system, which is real shaky, and you look at the government, which continues to spend trillions of dollars and
also very shaky.
And the debt is just astronomical, and it's a problem. And if you look at these other countries that are, moving away from the dollar, and they are looking for alternative ways to settle commodity trades, and a lot of these other countries that used to buy the United States debt are now looking for other ways to have a fractional reserve asset.
Yeah.
And gold is replacing a lot of that. So you have to ask yourself, is there a part of my plan where I think gold would be stabler, more stable? Is there a part of my plan where I think that it's too risky? Is there a part of my existing plan which I'm not really comfortable about, maybe taking a big loss in? Possibly, if you are in some of those situations and you would say, yes, there is, then maybe some of those paper assets should be converted to gold.
I think it's a great plan, and we're going to talk about that. If the system goes to collapse as well, you want to have some gold. If there's a reset, you want to have some gold. So let's talk about it. But first, you said, Jen, you get to take the reins today. Pick some stories for me. So this is fun. Usually you throw this stuff at me. Today I got one for you. But I think we have to start with the price of gold because that was a big story this week. Gold hit a record high price, $2,500 this week, 30% rise in the price in 11 months. Now, a lot of times that price may scare people off. What I think is funny is our buddy Stephen Moore said that when gold goes up, that means that inflation is huge. But he also opined, he said, but don't worry, because Fed Chief Jerome Powell says the inflation problem is behind us.
Yeah, right.
So I don't think that that's necessarily true. But why should people not be scared about the price of gold? Because you typically say it really doesn't matter so much, the price of gold.
Well, eventually gold is always going to make a new high because our dollar is ultimately going to buy less. That's the trend. And if you look at the price of gold 20 years ago, it was about $300 per ounce.
Yeah.
So today we're more than 8 times that price. So if we just saw the same performance of gold in the next 20 years, 8 times 2,500 is 20,000. But we know that the United States is going to spend more money that we don't have, more deficit spending. We know that debt is a problem for the government, for consumers, and we also know that for corporations, debt is also a problem because of higher interest rates. A lot of this debt is ultimately going to be refinanced at a higher rate. So that's a problem to service this debt. We've talked many, many times about how it's over $2 trillion. It's going to be possibly $2 trillion someday for the United States to just service their debt. Where is that money going to come from? Well, that's going to be printed too. So if we're in a system of fiat money, that system is almost built to fail. The only thing that keeps the fiat system together is the creation of more debt and more fake fiat money. So that's a given. It's inevitable. So if inevitably we're going to print more money and take out so much more debt, and the system is going to get more leveraged and shakier and shakier, over time, the dollar is going to lose value, and over time, the price of gold is going to reflect that at a higher price. So it's not so much, Jen, that the price of gold is going up. It's that the purchasing power of our dollar, our Federal Reserve note, which they call it, anybody who's driving around or at home, you can take a paper bill out of your pocket, open it up, and it says right on it, Federal Reserve note, which means that that's a debt instrument of a private corporation that has shareholders that is allowed to print money, lend that money to the United States, where we then pay interest on that, and money and debt is just created out of thin air.
All right. So I have a couple of other stories for you, but we'll get to those in a second. I do think it's the time, though, when you outlined the problem that we just keep spending and spending, and then we're going to have to print more money to
right. And
to
we
cover
hear
our
about
debt.
every new plan. That's how many more trillions of dollars more, and every kind of new handout. Or where is all this money going to come from? So it's just more of the same.
And then that ultimately would lead to the system collapsing because the system can't take the weight of that, right? So that's what we're talking about here. Is it a collapse or a reset? When you talk about a reset, what does that mean? What would that look like?
Well, when our money is going to be revalued possibly, or going forward, I think gold is going to have a lot bigger role backing our debt or possibly our money. So that reset could be a digital system. that reset could just be an overnight thing where we wake up and the next morning our money's worth a lot less than when we went to bed the night before. So we'll have to see, but a collapse is definitely possible, but a reset is inevitable. We will eventually have some sort of a reset where our money, who knows what it will be worth.
And then that means that you better have something at home outside of the system. And this is one of the reasons I think people look at gold and silver and precious metals in general, Ken. And that's because not only does it hedge against inflation, and it's good, it helps to preserve your wealth, but it's outside of the system. So if there is a reset, or if there is, God forbid, a collapse, or if there are bank closures, or if there is some sort of cyber attack, you have something that you hold on to.
Yeah, and I think about abundance a lot and sovereignty and freedom, and I think gold represents that, Jen. And fiat money represents debt, and that's not a healthy system. It's good versus evil, and I would almost say gold, silver represents good real money, and debt, that sort of thing.
I believe gold is written in 2 very important books/documents, right?
It is. Yeah, it is. Many times. I mean, it's real money. And according to the Constitution,
yeah.
That's right.
And what about the Bible?
That's right. It's real money. And
right.
That's the way that I would look at it. Gold and silver in some form is real money. It's the only form of real money that we have. And paper money's fiat. It's debt. It doesn't represent anything. It's not backed by anything. And the value continues to dwindle because the confidence in our government, in what they're doing, and the situation that they're in when it comes to finances and debt, the whole world is losing a lot of confidence in that.
That's why we tell you it is a great time right now, not to wait any longer, and to figure out how you can put precious metals to work for you, how you can add gold and silver to your portfolio. You can put some of your old retirement funds into gold and silver. You keep it at home. This is the ultimate hedge against inflation. It helps protect and preserve your wealth, to make sure you have what you need, to make sure that isn't taken away from you. And you can do it with a simple phone call today to Midas Gold Group, 855-322-4653. That's 855-322-GOLD. That's the way the number converts. So 855-322-GOLD. You can also check out the website, Ken. I know you've got lots of great articles and blog posts there. We've got links to this show and, of course, product catalogs. So you can take a look and see what's right for you.
Everybody's got Monday off this week, so,
Do some work on Monday, right? Do a little laboring.
Consider about maybe getting some gold.
That's right. Think about that. MidasGoldGroup.com for the website, MidasGoldGroup.com, and you can give them a call at 855-322-4653, 855-322-GOLD. It's a Gold Standard Radio Show with Ken Russo and Jennifer Horn.
Dr. Gorka here. You're listening to The Gold Standard with your hosts, Ken Russo from veteran-owned Midas Gold Group and Jennifer Horn. Owning private money in the form of physical gold and silver is perhaps more important than ever to your long-term financial security. As U.S. banks fail, the Biden administration sends hundreds of billions abroad while depleting our strategic oil reserves. However, the biggest financial threat may be coming from within: central bank digital currency. The patents have been filed and the big banks have released plans for implementation. Midas Gold Group sees tyrannical implications: the end of cash, the end of financial privacy, big government able to see your every purchase. Could there be ties to social credit? Hear more commentary on the political and economic issues that affect your financial security right here on The Gold Standard. You can create your own gold standard with a call to Midas Gold Group, 855-322-GOLD. That's 855-322-4653, MidasGoldGroup.com.
Welcome back. It is the Gold Standard Radio Show. Ken Russo and Jennifer Horn back together again. We thank you all for joining us. Sometimes you get a false start on the play. Sometimes you go before they open your mic and, here we are. But that's behind the scenes talk. Now, Ken Russo, our title today of this program, that's you, is will our system collapse or will there be a great reset? There's an argument that maybe both of those things could happen.
Yeah, maybe simultaneously.
And here's why. We have a lot of elected officials that come up with a lot of crazy ideas that have led us into this mess. We talk about Richard Nixon taking us off the gold standard, right? Taking away the backing of gold on and creating fiat currency. Kamala Harris is an elected official. Believe it or not, she's a vice president. She also would love to be president. And this weekend, she proposed.
She might be.
She might be.
Great news for a country that's already lost its way.
Yes.
All right.
She's proposed a $5 trillion tax plan.
Oh, okay.
Now, this could be the biggest tax hike in the history of the world.
Now, this doesn't include taxing unrealized gains. That's another one?
We're going to talk about that,
okay.
yes, for sure.
So this is just collecting more taxes from what? The uber wealthy?
Exactly, right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sure, just the wealthy, because that's how it works. So apparently...
Well, that's how they start it, Jen. That's how it starts,
That's how it begins.
Yes.
So instead of lowering taxes to make America more competitive... The Harris-Walz ticket is proving to be pretty anti-business with their tax plan. So here's
Sounds like a winning
got.
plan to me.
They want to raise the corporate tax from 21% to 28%,
Okay.
which means businesses are going to be running from here.
More cost cutting, more layoffs, which we're
exactly.
starting to see a real lot of now. I think Intel just laid off 15,000 workers.
Oof.
Yeah.
They're going to quadruple the tax on stock buybacks from 1% to 4%. They're going to double the global minimum tax from 10 to 20%. They're going to raise the top income tax rate from 37% to 39.6%. They're going to raise the corporate alternative minimum tax from 15% to 21%. Do you detect a trend here, by the way?
Wow.
They're going to raise the capital gains tax from 24% to 43.5%. They're going to impose the first ever tax on unrealized capital gains at 25%. We'll talk about that next.
Wow.
And finally, they are going to double the number of Americans subject to the death tax.
Wow.
You get that? They're going to
Makes
double
me
the
want
number
to
of
cross the
Americans.
border.
Yes, I know.
And come on in and get a free phone and health care and get on a few programs.
So the compounding effect of these multiple tiers of taxation would mean a $100 investment in a new company could be subject to an 80% tax rate.
Wow.
So this is pretty big stuff.
It's a difficult environment to have a prosperous new business.
But we wanted to talk a little bit this week about her idea for the unrealized capital gains, putting it at 25%. I want you to explain it because you're really the expert, but in my mind, this will kill older Americans. It will kill the people in the middle class who have inherited old houses. Think about this. Unrealized capital gains could mean you buy a house for $100,000, and lo and behold, in the real estate market, it's now worth $1 million, or maybe $1.5 million, or whatever it is, and you're going to have to pay capital gains taxes now on the difference between those
while
two
you
things.
still live in the home. It's
insane.
Yeah, I don't know how any of this makes any sense, but
Well, ultimately, with plans like this, who needs enemies?
Yeah.
No, with plans like this floating around, why is this more of an incentive for people to separate themselves from that system and look at gold and silver?
Well, I mean, the easy answer is this is all about more control and less privacy. So, I mean, if you're in a position where you could kind of give yourself more privacy, more private assets, give yourself an opportunity to have more control of your financial future, I mean, that's kind of what gold is all about. It goes back to kind of the sovereignty that we were mentioning before and financial freedom. But, I mean, it's the danger of paper assets. That's what this is. I mean, it's the danger of having everything where there's no everything is so convenient, right? It's put together so it's convenient, but there's no transparency. It's all just right there. So it's all monitored. It's all going to be tracked. And obviously that's the reason why it can be taxed. So if it can be monitored and controlled, it can then possibly be taxed.
And it seems that they're on the tax trajectory.
But the way that I look at this, Jen, is I just look at this as a system that's on fumes. I look at it as last-ditch efforts to try and just squeeze that last little drop of whatever out of before things just get really, really ugly. That's how it just makes me feel. I mean, I'm not a tax expert. I'm not a financial advisor or anything like that. But when I hear stuff like this, it just reminds me of a system that's dying. And the last-ditch efforts to try and keep the power, and the last-ditch efforts to try and keep people in a desperate situation, because desperation means that people are more easily controlled.
That's right.
So if you don't want to be in a desperate situation, and if you don't want to have everything that you have, out of your control, you have to do something about it. And that's how I would say gold comes into play. And I do think that gold will go up a lot in the future. So I do think it will act as a good investment as well as a hedge, or as well as a store of value. Because when you look at all of these other assets that are potentially going to be taxed, you also have to say to yourself, how much are people going to move around?
Yeah.
How much are they going to try and, sell, possibly, which can cause a lot of commotion. We don't know how the markets are going to react to stuff like this if it was actually ever passed. And that can cause huge market volatility. And not everybody wants to try and go through that again. Especially if you went through it back in 2008 and 2009 when we had the financial crisis. So these plans are not going to fix what's wrong with America. And these plans are not going to fix what's wrong with our dollar and deficits and that sort of thing. It's only going to make it worse.
And I'd imagine that with all of these proposed taxes and such, and you can look through the list yourself, they're going to take a lot more money from us, but they're still going to be borrowing. They're not going to use this to actually
It's not going to be
pay
like,
down
let's
the debt.
do this and clean it all up.
No.
It's just going to make the matters worse, like we were talking about. It's like the last stand, before there's a massacre. That's basically what it tells me. So it's a desperate government that's trying to hold on to power in any way. Why they would go this route, I don't know. I guess it just supports the agenda of whatever that the Democratic Party is trying to do, but it makes no sense to me, especially when we're talking about the health of our economy or the health of investors or entrepreneurs, but ultimately the health of our government or the health of our money. In my opinion, this totally makes the situation worse.
Absolutely. And, a couple of stories we can wrap up with today from California. There was one, a lot of grocery stores are going out of business because they're making maybe 1%. It's a very small profit margin for grocery stores. A lot of them are going out in San Francisco, out of our state, our home state of California, because they can't take the stealing, they can't take the theft, they can't take the prices. They're going out of business. So now someone in the California legislature has said that the grocery stores must give 6 months notice before they're allowed to go out of business in the state of California.
Yeah, and government controls, I think that, for groceries as well. So we're going to see a lot of empty shelves. We'll see higher inflation, and then we'll probably see
the Maduro plan is what we're seeing rolled out. And this is why gold and silver, again, more important than ever. Finally, you've got this story in California about the California Dream Act, where they're going to start giving $150,000 loans to first-time home buyers, regardless of their immigration status. They're opening up the program now to people who are even here illegally in the country. And where does this money come from, Ken?
Yeah.
They don't have it standing by. This is, again, another way for the state of California, the whole government, trying to figure out how they're going to bring more money into a system that, again, is very, very sick.
System built on debt, Jen.
Yeah.
It's a system addicted to debt, and more debt is not going to solve our problem. It's only going to make it worse. So that in alone is a reason to say to yourself, I need to do something about this present situation. The problem is not going to be having too many ounces of gold, in my opinion, over the next 10 years. The problem is going to be having too much debt, having too much money connected to a sick system that's drowning in debt, and we don't want to see a bad collapse.
Yeah.
Because then your hands are tied and there's nothing that you can do.
It's time to get back to what's real.
That's right. And you need to do that before it happens.
Yep. So that's why we ask you this week, hey, you've got Labor Day off. Why not? Make some plans. Get ready to put a call into Midas Gold Group. Find out how gold and silver can create a strategy for you to avoid all of this craziness, to get yourself outside of the system, outside of the chaos. 855-322-GOLD. 855-322-GOLD for Midas Gold Group. 855-322-4653. 855-322-4653. always online as well. MidasGoldGroup.com, MidasGoldGroup.com. Check out all the resources there, MidasGoldGroup.com.
Yeah. Have a great weekend.
Absolutely. Enjoy the long weekend.
Yes.
Right?
I am.
And then make a plan to take care of yourself because, as we've established, collapse
I'm
or
going to
reset.
get more gold as soon as I get to
That's what
the
you gotta
office
do.
on Tuesday.
855-322-GOLD or MidasGoldGroup.com. Thank you so much for joining us. It's a Gold Standard Radio Show with Ken Russo and Jennifer Horn.